The Boston Bruins have entered their Jiri Patera era, whatever that means, for the team and, most notably, for the Jeremy Swayman contract negotiations.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked Beat. Today is Thursday, October 3rd, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And before we get started looking at who is Jiri Patera and why is he a Boston Bruin, the latest on Jeremy Swayman and the Bruins preparing to play tonight in Quebec City, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. So on Wednesday, the Boston Bruins put in a successful waiver claim for goaltender Jiri Patera. Patera was a 6th-round draft pick of the Vegas Golden Knights several years ago now, has largely played in the AHL, had a few games up at the NHL level with the Vegas Golden Knights. And then this past summer, he signed a 2-year, $775,000 contract with the Vancouver Canucks, who are trying to sneak him through waivers for the purpose of assigning him to AHL Abbotsford, instead scooped by the Boston Bruins. Now, Patera has 8 appearances at the NHL level. 6 of them came last season with the Knights. He went 1-3-1 with an .893 save percentage. The year before that, 2022-23, he had 2 appearances, 2 wins with a .929 save percentage. Patera has spent the majority of his hockey career playing in the minors. Again, he was drafted 161st overall by Vegas in 2017. Last season, he had 25 games played with the Henderson Silver Knights with a .903 save percentage, a record of 11-10-4. Now, why did the Bruins bring this guy in? Well, currently, they're lacking some goaltending depth. Obviously, with the Jeremy Swayman contract negotiations completely up in the air following Cam Neely's reveal of the $64 million offer that's on the table, and Swayman and his agent Louis Gross clapping back and saying that was never on the table and we need some time to regroup here. So let's say Joonas Korpisalo, who's your opening night starter, is backed up by Brandon Bussi to start the season. Well, then you need a couple goalies in the AHL, enter Michael DiPietro and Jiri Patera. But there's also a case to be made that you have Patera as the opening night backup, seeing as he has at least some NHL experience where Bussi does not. Now, of course, we hear this all the time. You're applying for a job. They say, well, you don't have enough experience. How am I supposed to get the experience if I'm not first afforded the opportunity? So Bussi, let's say through the month of October, November, could equal or pass Jiri Patera's career appearances by being Korpisalo's backup. And Mark Diver, who covers Providence very closely, made it pretty clear on social media yesterday that he wasn't quite sure what the Bruins were thinking here. Bussi, to his estimation, has been one of the best goalies in the AHL for the last 2 years. Patera has been a goalie in the AHL for the last 2 years. So does Bussi still have the upper hand when it comes to the backup job, despite not having the best preseason so far? He did look pretty good in the game the other night against the Flyers. And indeed, we'll look later at the roster for tonight's game in Quebec City against the LA Kings, but he, along with Di Pietro and Korpisalo, will be in the lineup. So maybe each of those guys will get a period. Korpisalo is your number one guy right now, for better or worse. Bussy, who was undrafted, but has played very, very well, although he did have a bit of a drop-off in performance from year over year. 924 save percentage in 22-23, a 913 save percentage last season, 23, 10, and 5. Very solid numbers for Bussy. At any rate, the Bruins needed some depth at the goaltending position after not sticking with Casimir Kaskasuo, who was brought in on a PTO. Both Bussy and Patera are, well, Bussy's actually older, 26 years old. Patera's only 25. He'll turn 26 in February. Has that NHL experience. He's check for whatever that matters in terms of his relationship to David Pastrnak, Pavel Zacha. But what it does signal is that they're anticipating not having Bussy and Di Pietro in the AHL to begin the season, and therefore you need that extra goalie around to add that depth to the organization in the absence of your number one goalie. Patera will not be in the lineup tonight, but he could very well get a look in Washington on Saturday as the Bruins wrap up their preseason schedule. Obviously, he needs some time to get acclimated to the system, getting some practices in before either being sent to Providence or sticking with the main club. But the Bruins, using that waiver wire option to pluck Patera off. And don't forget, for Bussy to be assigned to the AHL, he would need to go through waivers. So it's quite possible that now that the Bruins have plucked someone off waivers, imagine Bruins putting Bussy on waivers and then Vancouver comes in and scoops him. Basically ends up being a trade. So very interesting move by the Bruins, and there's still an open job for the backup goalie as well as 1 and 2 in Providence. So they brought him in for the time being as the Jeremy Swayman contract situation continues to play out. We got some more insight into Jeremy Swayman's mindset via a preview of the Amazon doc that drops tomorrow, I believe. And we'll discuss that as well as all the latest with respect to his contract negotiations here as the podcast continues. What is up, NFL fans? Start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Again, I've been referencing the Bruins over-under over at FanDuel quite a bit. It's set at 97.5. Maybe you think they'll exceed those expectations and go over, or maybe the Jeremy Swayman contract dilemma has you thinking under. Just put $5 down. You'll get that $200 bonus bets guaranteed from FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. The Jeremy Swayman drama continues, and it's going to be played out for everyone to see on Amazon Prime as this doc gets set to drop, the Face-Off docuseries. And Chris Johnston of The Athletic had some insight into this via the Athletics, a preview where we see what he was thinking going back to the playoff run against the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. This was via Johnston and Fluto Shinzawa. Swayman is one of the stars of the Inside the NHL series, and he's featured in episode 3 of the behind-the-scenes look, kind of like a Drive to Survive look at the NHL. It's from the exact same production company, in fact. And some of the material, which was provided to The Athletic in advance of the series release on Friday, foreshadows and gives context to the contract stalemate the Bruins and Swayman now find themselves in. After the team's Game 6 loss to the Florida Panthers at TD Garden, Swayman wondered if it was his final game as a Bruin. He's quoted as saying, "I was just thinking about that jersey, like, is it the last time?" That's when I was like, whoa. You're skating around the Garden, you're looking up, you're hearing your name chanted, and it's like, whoa. Honestly, that does seem a bit odd to me. Your team just lost a playoff series, failed to force a Game 7, and you're already kind of thinking about, oh, my contract ask might be so big that the Bruins might not meet it, and maybe we'll have to trade me. Seems a bit early to be thinking about that. But as Boston's best player in the playoffs, arguably, he was thinking about his expiring 1-year, $3.475 million deal. And again, how his ask might be beyond Boston's reach. And he was open and realistic about the possibility of being traded. He said, "I don't want it to end. It could be the last time I wear a Bruins jersey, and I know I'm going to do everything in my power to be a Bruin for a long time. As a kid growing up in Alaska, this wasn't in my wildest dreams. Never want it to end. Just so grateful the sun's going to rise tomorrow, and there's another opportunity to get better. Whatever I can do to help the team win, I know everything else will take care of itself." Swayman's contract was on his mind even in the Toronto series, apparently. Swayman said, "We don't have to shy away from it. There's a contract on the line. I want to treat every game as it was my last because you really don't know what the hell could happen. I'll do whatever I can to not have regret when I look at myself in the mirror after it all. Yeah, I'm going to have to be the bleep in net. Like, I'm not going to let anything go in, but why wouldn't I smile, wink, and have fun?" And all of this comes from the arbitration hearing. He's had a chip on his shoulder for quite some time, since July 30th, 2023, where he clearly did not enjoy what he heard. He said, "When you go into that room, you don't say a word. My arbitrator started first. He said all these great things. The arbitrator on their side is to help management and to rip players. And hearing that you're not worthy of what you think you're worthy of, that was hard to hear. You don't forget what was said." He even said he wrote them down. He looked at them the other day and had a couple of check marks. "My biggest knock was how I wasn't trustworthy in the playoffs. Check." End quote. And to be honest, that's kind of fair. He did not have great playoff numbers prior to this run. And he did back that up with a fantastic performance against Toronto and Florida. That has apparently, after some concessions, been rewarded or attempted to be rewarded with an 8-year, $8 million per season contract. Took some time for the Bruins to get up there, to be fair, in his defense. But it seems kind of weird to already have been thinking about this contract stuff still in the playoffs. Focus on the game. You hear Brad Marchand say it all the time. He's not talking about it. It'll take care of itself. Was he thinking about his pending contract situation? No, I don't think so. Who knows? But to be that open about it right after the Toronto series and to be talking about it immediately after the loss to the Florida Panthers seems a bit soon. But I mean, it's certainly something that is on his radar and has been for quite some time following the arbitration hearing. Now, Swayman, to his credit, cemented himself as the Bruins starter during the playoffs. It was only 12 games, but he had a 215 goals against average, a 933 save percentage, and he had every reason to check that off his list. Not trustworthy in the playoffs? Boom. Look what I just did. I am capable. Yes, it's a small sample size. But at the same time, he backed that up and showed them. Still, if his ask is coming in around, obviously he was preparing for a large ask that he wasn't sure the Bruins would be able to commit to. And certainly that seems to be the case. If he came in hot at 9.5 or 10 million, as it has been reported, then yeah, that's a bit rich for just checking off that one box. Losing in the second round, some good performances against Toronto and Florida. But it's not as if the Bruins went on and won the cup and he was the Conn Smythe Trophy winner. Obviously, he'd have a bigger check on his resume at that point. As it stands, we're still in a holding pattern. Swayman and the Bruins, I don't know. That 8-year, $64 million offer remains on the table. A reminder that it was Swayman himself and his agent who opted for arbitration last summer. You get what you ask for, I guess. Except in the case of asking for $10 million or $9.5 million. Again, the question is, has that relationship been ruptured to the point of no return? He clearly has resentment, some bruises from that arbitration process. You have an $8 million deal on the table. Are they going to be able to rectify it, or will they have to move on? That remains to be seen. And the season opener is only 5 days away now, with 2 preseason games left to go. And of course, that December 1st deadline is looming. The Bruins do have a preseason game on tap tonight, and we'll discuss who's in the lineup here as the podcast continues. The Boston Bruins are in Quebec City tonight to take on the Los Angeles Kings, and we have a lineup that includes Fabian Lysell. If you recall the other day when he was sent down, it was an issue of whether he would be coming back up, not necessarily a permanent assignment to the AHL, according to Don Sweeney. And here we have him back, ready to get another look in the NHL lineup, one that will feature Patrick Brown, Justin Brazeau, Charlie Coyle, Trent Frederick, Tyler Johnson, still on the PTO, Max Jones, Cole Koepke, Elias Lindholm, David Pastrnak, Riley Tufte, Jeffrey Viel, and Pavel Zacha. Now, I don't really know why Viel and Brown are still around. Koepke, Tufte, kind of guys in the mix for the fourth line. 2 notable absences are Matt Poitras, who is listed as day-to-day by head coach Jim Montgomery, and Marchand. They're being precautionary with his illness. The other night, he had to leave early because of illness, not quite feeling up to par. On the back end, we have Brandon Carlo, Hampus Lindholm, Mason Lohrei, Charlie McAvoy, Billy Sweezy, Parker Witherspoon, and Nikita Zadorov. You will notice that most of the top 6 is there, minus Andrew Peeke. Goaltending, Brandon Bussey, Michael DiPietro, and Joonas Korpisalo. So that's the lineup that will be facing the Los Angeles Kings here tonight. And what to look out for? Well, we're going to be looking, of course, at how Fabian Lysell performs. He did not impress early on, but slowly improved over the course of the preseason in the first 3 games. And perhaps the reality check that he's very well likely headed to the AHL will put a, what do you call it? A burr in his saddle, so to speak, and get him going. We'll also be looking at the top line, getting another look. Zacha, Lindholm, Pastrnak should be prime time here for the Bruins. We have Parker Witherspoon, Billy Sweezy. These are guys who are in the mix for the 7th defenseman role. And of course, it will be cool just to see a game in Quebec City where, let's be honest, NHL team should be residing. Just seeing a post here from Fluto Shinzawa of The Athletic, a fan survey, asking whether or not the 8 times $8 million deal for Swayman is fair. 1,400 votes, 91.5% voted yes, that it's very fair. Is Swayman asking for too much? 75% of respondents said yes. So public sentiment clearly turning in the Bruins' favor. Cam Neely was not afraid to pack any punches as a player, and not holding back with respect to these Jeremy Swayman contract negotiations. On tomorrow's podcast, we will recap tonight's game, go through the 3 S's, storylines, stats, and signals, bring you all the latest on Jeremy Swayman as we get ready. Oh, and also preview the final preseason game with the regular season opener set for Tuesday. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, friends. I hope you're all having a great week. Please do take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.